Joe Biden sat down with the New York Times and gave a long interview because, as you know, the New York Times, they endorse a candidate for president, and they interviewed about 9 candidates. I did a video about Bernie's interview, a short clip yesterday. And particularly here, what I want to talk about is Joe Biden's position on marijuana. Now, there are a lot of interesting things that he said. Let's take a look at the article here, all right? So former Vice President Joe Biden reaffirmed that he's opposed to legalizing marijuana without further studying its potential health risks. Where's the surprise? Okay, where's the surprise? In an interview with the New York Times editorial board that was published on Friday, the 2020 presidential candidate was asked to explain his more moderate approach to cannabis policy when nearly all of his primary opponents, as well as the public, have embraced broad legalization. Yeah, because most of the people running for president, whether it's Andrew Yang, who actually wants to legalize all drugs, or whether it's Bernie Sanders, they're all in favor of legalization, okay? And so is the American public. You have 2/3 of the American public, which is in favor of legalization, and more than half the states have already legalized it. So not only is this chump late to the show, he's trying to go backwards too. I mean, because I think science matters, he said. I mean, one of the reasons I'm running against the guy I'm running against is science matters, not fiction. So he's trying to put a little jab there against Donald Trump, you know, because Donald Trump thinks windmills cause cancer. So he's not exactly the most scientifically fluent person. But I mean, how are you any better with this stupid position? You're kind of in the same boat. He also said that he's not arguing that marijuana is a gateway drug, something that he did indicate might be the case last year, though he walked it back after facing pushback and being attacked for the statement on a debate stage. So again, that just shows you that Joe Biden doesn't have the right answers that you are looking for, that the majority of Americans are looking for, but sometimes he will bow to pressure. That's not a very good sign, okay? Yes, it's great when politicians bow to pressure, but he just walked back his position on something he's not going to do anything about, okay? So that's not a very good sign. When he's already starting off with the wrong position, do you think Bernie Sanders had to be pressured into any of his positions, or did he support them right from the get-go? And that's why he's the most popular candidate and politician in the country. Food for thought. What I'm arguing is there have been studies showing that it complicates other problems if you already have a problem with certain drugs. What does that even mean? I literally don't know what that sentence means. So if you're doing heroin, you gonna have problems doing weed? Or what are you saying? Or if you take a prescription, you're gonna have problems taking weed? What does that got to do with anything? That sentence literally means nothing. It's just gibberish. So we should just study it and decriminalize it, but study it and find out. Get the medical community to come up with a final definitive answer as to whether or not it does cause it. Cause what? Again, this guy, he's so incoherent when he speaks. If it does cause other problems, then make it clear to people. So that's a place you don't engage in the use of it. Look, man, I think the medical scientific evidence on marijuana is quite extensive. Okay? It's quite extensive at this point. So I don't know what he's talking about. There isn't a lack of studying on marijuana. I don't know what he's talking about. The former vice president's marijuana reform plan involves rescheduling the plan to make it easier for researchers to access, decriminalizing simple possession, and expunging prior cannabis records. A member of the Times editorial board noted that marijuana is legal in some form in a majority of states, to which Biden said, sure, they have, I get that, but that doesn't mean the science shouldn't be looked at. Again, no one is saying refuse all marijuana research. Who said that? You're saying that. That literally has nothing to do with what he just said. Unbelievable. This is Joe Biden. This is who we're dealing with. The former vice president has previously said that states should be able to implement their own legalization laws without federal interference. You know what that sounds like to me? That reminds me of his segregation, his busing position in the 60s, right? Which, I mean, has always been the position of racists. They're like, oh, no, get the federal government off our backs. Let the states have their freedom to decide. Let the states have their freedom to be racist, which is exactly the position he was advocating for when he was against busing. He was saying, no, don't get the federal government involved. Let the states do that on their own. We trust them. They're good little cookies. Trust them to do what? Not implement it? The whole reason you had to get it done federally is because the states weren't doing it and being run by racists. He's basically just saying here, yeah, let's put it on the back burner. Let the states decide. Let it take another, 200 years before it's legalized everywhere. Dude, a majority of states have already fucking legalized it. That's how behind the federal government is on this issue. It's already legal in a majority of states. They don't even need you anymore. That's how behind you are. Asked whether he'd support legalizing cannabis while simultaneously encouraging research into it, the candidate said no. Why would you promote the science if the science would say it'd be a bad idea to legalize it? You have got to find out the facts first. This is so infuriating. Who has ever suggested that legalizing it would be a bad thing? Where are you getting this from? He's just trying to hide behind this pretense of, oh, I'm a rational guy. I'm all about the facts. I'm all about the science, bro. Do you know what I'm saying, bro? Gotta get the research, bro. And then maybe, we can do what you want. But by the way, let's get something straight here. I've argued for some time total decriminalization. Anyone who has a record, it should be immediately expunged. So when you come to work for the New York Times and they ask you if you have any problems, any criminal arrests, you don't have to say yes because it'll be completely expunged. And in fact, there should be anyone who has been served any time in prison or is in prison, which a few people are these days, that they immediately be released and the record totally expunged. Man, I can't even read. This is obviously verbatim because it's exactly how he speaks, which is incoherent. It makes it so difficult to read. Okay, so what he's saying here is, let's expunge the records of people that I helped put in jail because I'm a racist bastard. That's what he's saying here. Well done. Oh, you finally come around? Really? How marvelous of you. After your crappy crime bill, you finally came around, 30 years later. Wow. Isn't that dandy? Earlier in the interview, Biden was asked to reflect on anything that you have changed your mind about, and you brought up his record on criminal justice reform, particularly his role in crafting punitive anti-drug laws at crack cocaine as a senator during the Reagan administration. I made a big mistake in the criminal justice side. It's easy to forget now, but when all of a sudden crack was introduced as a great threat to the United States of America, I said. So again, the criminal justice reform, his harsh stance on this whole 3-strike stuff and putting people behind bars for non-violent drug offenses. What have you done? You just implemented modern slavery is effectively what you've done with that shitty crime bill. Okay? Incarcerating, I don't even know how many millions. There's a sizable chunk of people in jail right now, not counting the ones who have already gone to jail in the last 30 years, but a sizable chunk right now who are in there for non-violent drug offenses. Under the Anti-Drug Abuse Act that Biden helped draft and was an original co-sponsor for, crack offenses were made 100 times more severe than powder cocaine, leading to rampant racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Yeah, they made the punishments 100 times more severe for the drug, where you would find mostly in communities of color. Basically meaning that you punish people of color 100 times more than, the rich white folk who don't do that crack. They just do the powder, right? So we're not going to punish them as hard. No, we'll punish the blacks and the people of color. That's Joe Biden. That's his foresight. That's his maturity. That's the kind of politician you're dealing with. You're owning up to something enormous. Enormous here. Is this really someone you want elected? The person who makes gaffes like that. I don't even call it a gaffe. It's a crime. It's in itself what he's done. It's put a lot of people in jeopardy, put them in jail, and it's had a disproportionate impact on minority communities, particularly African American communities. I sorely regret that. Oh wow, you sorely regret that. Wow. You sorely regret that, really. Yeah, that doesn't make up for anything. You know what would make up? You getting the hell out of politics. That would be a good start. Okay, no one wants more of you. If you know that you do enormous mistakes like that, why are you still running for office? You obviously don't have the right judgment and the foresight to be in those kinds of positions of power if you're shitting on people of color all the time. And then he goes on to say, we've also learned a lot more about drug abuse overall. It used to be that we thought, I spent a lot of my career in the Judiciary Committee dealing with this issue. He said, we used to argue, man, it's so hard reading his rambling here. He interjects 4 sentences before getting to the point. It drives me nuts. I'm just going to get to the point. He says here that we thought mental illness was a product of drug abuse. It's the reverse. Mental illness is the reason for drug abuse. It's not the reverse. Yeah, exactly. That's probably the only sane thing that or correct thing that he said so far. It's true, And this is why you see these like abhorrent morons in their pickup trucks doing these rants as if someone asked them their shitty opinion about like, oh yeah, drug abuse, that's like drug addiction. That's a choice. It's not a disease. Who the fuck asked you? That's medically, scientifically false. You pulled that out of your ass. But anyway, it's here. It's like he's saying. The science now proves that it's the other way around. The drug abuse comes from mental illness. And so what he's trying to say is that because Joe Biden at the time, thought that mental illness was a risk of drug abuse, he wanted to be really harsh on drug abusers to protect them from getting mental illness. What? I don't buy that for 1 second, man. Because all this guy did was make sure that the war on drugs continued and police forces were further militarized, and you had this continuous cycle of incarcerating people, putting them in jail, feeding the prison industrial complex. That's what it's all about in the end. It's not because Joe Biden has such a good heart and he was worried about people getting mental illness from drug abuse. That's fucking horseshit. I don't buy that for 1 second, okay? He's just trying to make money for his rich buddies in the government, in the private sector. That's it. That's what it's always about with all of these politicians. And the point that I wanted to get to with all of this is that you compare this position from Joe Biden to Bernie Sanders' plan of legalizing marijuana, which goes way further than just making it legal. I mean, it's light years apart. Light years. I had made a video the day that Bernie Sanders announced his plan on legalizing marijuana, and I covered all the points in it. It's a brilliant, fabulous plan. Once again, unparalleled. It's the only comprehensive one. He says he was going to legalize it by executive order if he has to. He's going to get it done in the first 100 days. Okay? He's going to ensure that the profits that are made from marijuana go to communities of color, okay, which were hit the most by the war on drugs. Those are the communities that were suffered the most under the war on drugs. Those are the communities that had most people sent to jail because of the war on drugs. So he's going to invest that money back into them where it belongs. He's going to create a $20 billion grant program to provide grants to entrepreneurs of color who continue to face discrimination and access to capital. With this revenue, we will also create a $10 billion grant program to focus on businesses that are at least majority owned or controlled by those in disproportionately impacted areas or individuals who have been arrested for or convicted of marijuana offenses. So you see here, making sure that the revenue is directed towards communities of color, people of color, and helping them grow their businesses. Okay. And another huge point, of course, is to expunge all the records, vacate and expunge all past marijuana related convictions, both federal and state. All past convictions will be expunged. And another huge point is making sure that the marijuana industry doesn't turn into big tobacco, because I can assure you, big tobacco, they are dying to get a piece of this pie. They are dying to monopolize this industry because it is a $1 billion industry. Just look at Colorado and the states that have legalized it. They're making tons of money from this. And you have to be very careful that it doesn't turn into another monopolized behemoth, just like big tobacco, okay, with Philip Morris and all these other huge companies just ransacking the entire thing. It says here, big tobacco is already targeting the marijuana industry for its profits. As president, Bernie will not allow marijuana to turn into big tobacco. He will incentivize marijuana businesses to be structured like nonprofits, prohibit products and labels that target young people, ban companies that have created cancer-causing products or guilty of deceptive marketing. Philip Morris, right? So there you go already. They're done for, these tobacco companies. Institute market share and franchise caps to prevent consolidation and profiteering, meaning protections against monopolization. So, man, I mean, just look at this. Look at this. And compare that to this garbage by Joe Biden. That guy is in the Stone Age still compared to this plan. he just talks the talk, and he doesn't even talk it that well. He's just saying, oh yeah, I feel bad that I screwed over millions of African Americans and people of color. Maybe we'll expunge their records and maybe decriminalize weed. Dude, it's already legal in more than half the country. No one needs your decriminalization. It's already legal in most states. So you're going backwards, effectively. And expunging the records, it's not enough. How are you protecting communities of color still after that? How are you making sure that they get a piece of the pie? How? You're not. Again, man, you contrast what Joe Biden is offering to Bernie Sanders to this Cadillac package that Bernie Sanders has. Joe Biden, man, he's blown away. Forget it. And this is just one of many, many examples. It's the same with everything. If you look at healthcare, it's the same goddamn thing. If you look at climate change, it's the same goddamn thing. Bernie Sanders blows him away and leaves him in the dust. I mean, it's not even a competition. If the majority of people truly understood the contrast between them, that is so real and apparent, no way that guy would be polling as frontrunner. And right now, when you look at the Iowa caucus and the primaries about to start, Joe Biden is the biggest danger to Bernie Sanders. Yes, it's something to be reckoned with. I think he's surely going to win South Carolina, and we're going to see what happens in Iowa. It's a tough one. It's really tough, man. Again, of course, Bernie is polling really well in Iowa and, the early primary states like New Hampshire as well. But still, man, it's a lot of people still have this stupid nostalgia of the Obama days associated with Joe Biden, and they think he's like some, twinkle toed little altar boy. No, he's a monster. I'm sorry. If you look at his record, he's a monster. He's devastated African Americans, people of color. He's voted for wars. He just cares about profits. He's a racist. No, that guy is nothing compared to Bernie Sanders. He's an abysmal choice. And anyone who votes for him, I mean, they're really grossly misinformed. So we'll see what happens. But I had to comment on this because like I said, I did a video about Bernie Sanders' marijuana legalization plan the day it came out, which was like 2 months ago or something. And I remembered how comprehensive it was. And when I saw what Joe Biden is saying in his New York Times interview now, I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, this guy is in the Stone Age still. Truly. He doesn't even smoke marijuana, neither does Bernie Sanders. But this is just the reality of it. You have a racial factor in all of this, where the prison industrial complex and the military industrial complex have been profiting off of this war on drugs. And who suffers the most? Brown and black people. That's the facts. That's the truth. And only Bernie Sanders is going to do them justice. Only Bernie Sanders.